Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome to another handsome episode of your favorite Mad Men podcast, Made Man, where this morning I watched Season 6, Episode 10 of Mad Men, A Tale of Two Cities. And yes, if you are a up-to-date listener, again, with a Sunday, but I had a feeling it was going to happen this week. Last week, I was in complete Star Wars mode. All I was watching were the Star Wars movies, getting all caught up. And then Friday night, went to go see The Rise of Skywalker at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't get home till almost 1 a.m. I just knew there was no chance I was going to be able to podcast. I was kind of a mess most of the day yesterday as far as tired and falling asleep and all that stuff. But here I am today to talk about a wonderful episode of Mad Men. But before I do, I've got more voicemails from my buddy Raphael, and before we hear from Raphael, let's hear a message from today's sponsor.
Hello, this is Raphael. This is in regarding to the Tale of Two Cities, next episode. Clearly referring to New York City and LA, as both Don and Roger take their trip to LA to visit Carnation with Harry. But I also think that the Tale of Two Cities may refer to the two actual advertising firms that have merged. You have the struggle between Cutler and the firm that he's respective to, and then you have, even at the end of the last scene, you see Pete representing from the other kind of city, the other firm, the old Sterling Cooper, Draper Price. So you kind of see those internal struggles occurring as these two newly merged firms are kind of battling, having this internal battle going on. The one thing I liked about the LA trip was kind of seeing how both Roger and Don are reacting to it differently. Roger, who was pretty much shown to be out of his element in LA, kind of real sure of himself and secure while in New York, but in LA, you saw that even absorbing a punch from little short producer Danny. So LA's really not treating Roger well in this episode. As Don's really finding kind of an attraction to the city, smoking some hashish, but then of course it turns sour as he had a near-death experience, seeing Megan, seeing the ghost of the soldier, until Roger saved him out from the pool. But I also think that this episode is a clear indication of where advertising is going. Definitely have a lot more companies that are represented in the West. So just as Roger told Danny, are you going to keep going west? Well, I think that's just how indicative it is of industry in general. That they're heading west, and you have agencies that are set up in the east that are going to have to establish new quarters in the west to handle this type of industrial or commercial movement to the west. The one thing I did love about this episode was seeing the growth in Peggy and Joan. Clearly, this episode was regarding Joan's kind of journey or struggle to emerge as a credible partner. Clearly, she has let this stigma of how she became a partner impact her and impact her worth. I mean, clearly, even when Peggy, out of jest, when she's mad, makes a remark to Joan that I didn't sleep with Dawn, you can see that Joan is still affected by this. Anybody would be. But I clearly love this episode just by seeing the growth in Joan. She saw an opportunity, and that entrepreneurial spirit in her just erected and rose. And clearly, she's shown that she can play with the big boys by wrangling in Avon. And I also applaud Peggy's growth as well. Clearly seeing Peggy kind of save Joan from that meeting was a clear growth in her as well. And then the one other thing I did love was seeing the two client meetings and the two distinct differences in how those those came about.
Oh, what a wonderful sponsor and a wonderful bunch of voicemails from Raphael. And I have to say, once again, I didn't listen to his messages. So hopefully he doesn't say anything offensive on there. I'm listening to them now as I'm listening to this episode. And I looked at them, I saw them, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to listen to them. And the reason I didn't want to listen to them, and no offense, Raphael, because I'm playing them, I obviously like them, I did not want to be swayed in any way with any opinion. I wanted to kind of go in completely blind, and maybe we'll see if things match up with what my buddy Raph and my brain said. I don't know if that will happen, but maybe. So, A Tale of Two Cities. What are these two cities? What does that mean? Well, that is a Dickens, right? Charles Dickens? Me Smart. That's a Dickens story. So I don't know the significance of how that works into it because, again, me smart. But I do know that in this episode, it is kind of a tale of two cities, almost a tale of three cities, because we have New York, we have L.A., and we have Detroit. But I think the two cities are L.A. and Detroit. Both of those cities are where clients are, and they have to go and meet with those clients, or a few clients. There's a lot that happens in this episode. And it's like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the characters. Because that's how I usually do it, because I already forget how this episode started. Because, again, me smart. I think it starts with Dawn watching TV, but I could be wrong. So it's the Democratic convention. It's right around the time Nixon. It looks like we're in the 70s now. That I probably should have known. I've been watching this show. I mean, you think I'd know where we are? We're in the 70s now, and Nixon is he's gonna be the president. They don't know that. They don't expect that, or at least Dawn was like, "You think Nixon's gonna win?" And there's a little back and forth between him and Megan talking about it. He's like, "You can't even vote." And she's like, "I still live here." Maybe that came later. I'm really bad at this. I can't believe you still listen. I love that you do. It's obviously my smooth and sultry voice and my very good vocabulary. So let's just go with Dawn. Dawn is traveling. Megan's packing his swimsuit. She really wants him to go swimming. She says that a few times. You should go swimming. You should go swimming. It makes you feel better. And remember, Dawn did go swimming at one point. There was like a time where he would go. Remember, like when he wrote the essay about tobacco and getting out of tobacco, he wrote that and thought about it while he was going swimming. I feel like that all happened around that time where he joined a gym and swam laps in a big pool. But he's going out there, and he was like, you should come with me. And she's like, "Oh, I can't." She goes, "Come on, we can go to Disneyland." Remember the last time that we went out there, how great it was? She's like, "Oh, I made the biggest mistake of my life." She said it jokingly. But she's like, "Don't talk to any actresses." He's like, "Oh, there are actresses out there? I hate actresses." It was a nice little back and forth between the two of them. I enjoyed it. I'm like hoping that Dawn is present. Remember, like the last episode, he's like, "I haven't been present. I haven't been around," and he wants to be more. I hope he is more. I don't know if that's the case, because I thought maybe he stepped out on Megan already in this episode, but I don't think he did. I think this was all in his head. We'll get there. So, Dawn gets to work. Obviously, he always shows up to work late. And it seems like that's a reputation for these New Yorkers. He goes into the board meeting, and Harry Hamlin's there, and they're talking about Harry Hamlin. I still don't know his character's name. Ted, and Bert, and Roger, and Joan, I believe, is there, and Pete. And they're talking about the fact that there was a letter addressed to them with, like, all their initials. SC... DPCGC, because they don't have a name yet. They don't have a if they don't have a name, people are just going to start naming them. So the big thing in this episode was, what's the name going to be? Is it going to have everybody? Is it going to have all the initials? What partners are going to be left off? Is it going to have CGC in it? Is CGC going to be first? Is it going to be second? And the ending of this episode, it makes me seem like makes me think that something's happening, and the wool is being pulled over, maybe the Sterling Cooper people's faces. Remember, the one thing I do remember is the Tale of Two Cities first line is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So maybe there's some sort of play there where things are going really good there, but maybe they're not going as good as you think they are. Interesting. There seems to be a lot of turmoil in the ranks, and there still seems to be like an us against them, and that seems to be Harry Hamlin's doing, and I don't trust this man. He's very smooth. I enjoy the character. He's very, not maybe smooth isn't the right. It's something about he's like stiff, but in a confident way. Like maybe that's not smooth, but I don't know. Whatever it is, I enjoy the portrayal of whoever this character is. I don't think I'm going to be a fan of the character. Where with Ted, I really like him. He seems earnest. I mean, there is the time he kissed Peggy, but other than that, he seems like a straight shooter. But while that is going on, they're talking about having to go to Detroit, and Detroit, I guess, is going so good that they need someone else out there, not just Ken. Detroit wants someone else out there because Ken's not enough. Ken wasn't in this episode at all, but as it turns out, did Pete offer to go? I think Pete offered to go, and but Ted decided he was going to go to Detroit. At the same time, Roger, I think, wanted to go, but Roger's going to L.A. for quote-unquote some reason. Roger and Don are going to L.A. with Harry to make connections with a bunch of clients. We only see one meeting of a client, but apparently none of the meetings seem to go all that well. So why don't we stick with Roger and Don? Did I say Roger and Dean? Roger and Don. Let's just stick with them. They go out to L.A. with Harry. They're driving a Mustang, a Mustang convertible, which Don's like, can you get rid of this thing? Can you get something with Chevy? Because it's a Ford, and I don't think they should be seen in a Ford when they are working with their clients is Chevy. But Harry, all he cares about is being in a convertible and how cool he looks and how cool he feels and how confident he is out there. Roger wants to go out, wants to go to clubs, wants to see women dancing in cages. Don just seemed tired and wanted to go to bed. He couldn't sleep on the plane because Roger wouldn't stop talking. There was a cool little back and forth with Roger and Don on the plane where Roger was like, we are, he talked about like who we are. We are ad men. We're going out there. We know better. We should, he's like, don't worry about that stuff. He didn't want him studying, didn't want him, reading all these things. He just wanted him to relax. He's like, you got this. You know how to do your thing. And sorry, I got distracted as it seemed like a bad injury happened on the football field just now. Anyway, oh yeah, that was bad. So where was I? So they're on the plane, and Roger's just confident. Like he didn't want Don to study. He didn't want to do anything. He's like, we're these big New York ad men. We go in, we know what we're doing. And Don wasn't like that. Don seemed like he was like, the reason I know what I'm doing is because I study. And Roger's like, no, stop doing your homework. Stop working. Stop worrying about it. I'm not sure why Roger was that way, but they get to L.A. and that's right. He said, I'm going to cut you off. And Don's like, you're drinking more than I am. He goes, no, I'm going to cut you off from work. He didn't want him to work. He wanted to relax a little. But when they get to L.A., they do have a meeting with a client. It's Carnation. Carnation Instant Breakfast. You're going to love it in an instant. I don't know if I've ever had Carnation Instant Breakfast. I may have had it before. But they are, it's like, it's not Slim Fast. It's like a milkshake, like a smoothie, like a chocolate vanilla shake that you'd have for breakfast. I didn't realize they've been around since the 70s, but now that I realize they've been around pretty much as long as I can remember, so why wouldn't they be around in the 70s too? I was around in the 70s. they went in there and they were talking. Before they go into Carnation, I love when there's the backdrop of the real world, or not the backdrop, but like there's this real world happening going on, and it's in the background of Mad Men. So like, you know, the characters are going through their stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of this. Like there is this real world stuff. We have the Kennedy assassination. We have the RFK assassination. We have the Martin Luther King assassination. We have the Vietnam War, and that seems to be the big thing going on now. The Vietnam War, and you know, they were showing I think they're known as the riots of Chicago. I think that's what we were seeing, and it's on the news, and they're watching it. Don's watching it. He gets a call from Megan. She's watching it. They're upset. And Don and Megan have a nice little conversation together. Nothing crucial, just little character building moments in their relationship. I don't think anything crazy came out of it. So the next day they go to see Carnation Instant Breakfast. And they started talking to one of the guys, about everything going on. And the guy's joking, like, the Democratic Party, I mean, they're over with. What's, you know, don't even worry about them. You know, they're probably gone forever. And then the other guy comes in and he's like, what are we talking about here? Well, politics, there's no place for this. And he just gets really awkward. He starts yelling about how politics shouldn't happen. Then he starts really talking, condemning them about being these New York ad men. You know, you take. He said something like, "When we're ready to call you, you know, being out in New York, you're never there. You're out on lunch, and when you're back, we're out on lunch." And it's funny, when I first thought of it, I thought, oh, he sees them as not hardworking, as not caring, as being, you know, these just like, you know, alcoholic, like just these like guys who don't care. They're just northeastern people who are, you know, only care about money, don't care about the client. But I realize now he was kind of talking about how he doesn't like the fact that, or at least partly, maybe it was part of that, but partly also, he doesn't like that he has to deal with a client who's on a 3-hour time difference. So literally, when it's like 9 a.m. for him, it's noon in New York, and they're going off to lunch. And then maybe 2 or 3 o'clock, they call them back. It's noon in L.A., so they're off at lunch. So I think there was some of that too. But this guy was very, very awkward and very aggressive. And I did like that Roger's like, look, I'm sorry. I don't know what your last girlfriend did for you. I'm sorry about that. But he seemed like he tried to smooth them over. Nothing seems to flap Roger Sterling all that much. He seemed that he always tries to be the smooth guy about it. And I don't know. That's what I love about him. He directed this episode, John Slattery. Harry was in that meeting too. I don't remember him saying much, but they were talking about, because Carnation still doesn't do any commercial, any television. And was it that, or no, it was something else, like Sunkist only does print. It was something weird about it that they didn't want to be seen as breakfast cereal, as with breakfast cereal, but like they were like, you should be advertising on Saturday mornings. He's like, along with breakfast cereal. And it was an interesting thing where it seemed like these guys were old timers who didn't trust in what Roger and Don were saying. It doesn't seem like any of their meetings, we only saw one, but it doesn't seem like any of their meetings went all that well. After the meeting, Roger talked about, Harry was like, we have a party. Harry has all these connections out there because he works so much in TV. So Harry, Roger, and Don all go to this party up in the Hollywood Hills. Not Beverly Hills, the Hollywood Hills. And they get there, and it's just a bunch of hippy-dippy, like, people smoking and drinking, and very much like, hey, like, this is the 70s, and it's still, like, the hippies are still there. The hippie movement, you know, isn't over yet. The war is still going on. Protests are still going on, as we saw on TV. But they get there, And there's a lot going on, and just Roger and Dawn look so stiff in their suits. It's pretty funny. But they go in there, and the first thing they see is Danny. And I was like, wait a minute, Danny. And I forget his last name. He goes by Daniel now. Apparently he is a film director. He was trying to get into advertising. He was, he's the cousin of someone I don't even remember. But he is, he's out there doing films now. He knows someone from Warner Brothers. And, wait. He was Roger's ex-wife's cousin. That's how they brought him in for a meeting. And he, now he wears like, I don't know, what do you call that stuff? Like a hemp jacket, like beads. His hair's long. He's got facial hair. He's just kind of a hippy dippy now. And he's living the dream. He's got this young woman out there with him. He's probably, making movies. And it was funny that Roger just made short jokes, just picked on him and made short jokes, hated him, and it was disrespectful to him, and he just didn't seem to care. Meanwhile, Dawn is talking to someone at the bar about this guy who is a musician but wouldn't mind working in jingles. And then Harry's like, let's go meet this guy, this other guy before we leave. Dawn goes inside looking for the bathroom, ends up where all these hippie dippies are smoking on a hookah. There's this woman there. She's the one who brought them into the party. And then the next thing we see with Dawn is he is making fun. No, he is standing up with that woman and kissing her. And then in walks Megan. But Megan looks different. Megan has long hair. Megan is all happy about, doesn't mind that he's kissing this other woman. He's like, no, I don't mind. This is California. Everything's cool out here. I live here now. And then she's like, I want to celebrate. And she grabs his hand and puts it on her stomach. And she's saying she's pregnant. And he's like, what? He's like, what is it? She said, it's a fresh start. And I'm thinking this is all from the hashish he was smoking in the hookah pipe. But I was wondering if he was being carried around by another woman, if there was another woman that just looked like Megan, but that doesn't seem to be the case at all. And then he sees this army guy who's missing an arm, and he's talking about, he's like, oh, I'm dead now. And I'm 95% sure it's the guy who he got the lighter from at the beginning of this season when they were out in Hawaii. I think that's who that was. And Dawn, anything with army men, he goes, oh, he's like, why don't you have your arm? He goes, oh, we don't become whole when we're in heaven or in the afterlife. We don't get everything back. You should see how you're going to look. And then he said, you're not a good swimmer or something like that. And then we see Dawn looking at himself by the pool, face down in the pool. We realize Dawn is in the pool. Next shot, we see him coming to. Roger's over him. He's spitting out water. He's like, all right, everybody, he's fine. They don't call 911. They don't call anything. He's fine. He's just a bad swimmer. Apparently, the hookah got him so wasted that he walked into the pool and almost drowned. I don't think anything happened. I don't think he kissed that woman. He obviously didn't see Megan. I don't think any of that happened. I think it was all in his head. But the funny thing, this fresh start thing, it was like, that is something that's in the back of his head. I think, obviously, maybe he wants to. And is it a fresh start for him, or is it a fresh start for him and Megan? Maybe he thinks a baby will make things better. It's interesting to see how what that means, because a lot of this show is kind of seeing Dawn deal with everything that Dawn's had to deal with, like how he deals with life, how he's trying to get by in the world, how he's trying to better himself, how he's trying to come to terms with choices he's made in his life. This whole thing with seeing Megan, it's there for a reason, and I hope he remembers it, and I hope something comes from that. I don't know, maybe he wants to get Megan and have a baby with her. I don't know. Or maybe she's pregnant, and this is kind of his way of finding out, like, supernaturally. I don't know. But before they leave the party, Roger sees. He's trying to get that girl who was with Danny, trying to get her to come back to his hotel with him. And Danny shows up, and he's like, "Come on, let's go." And he's still making short jokes. And he says, Roger, I don't like violence. Roger's like, oh, I like violence. I used to box. And then Danny punches him right in the nuts, which was great. Roger turns over. He goes, I hated that I had to do that, and just leaves. So Roger's left in alert, and this guy Danny is like, you know what? I got the upper hand. I'm better off in my life. You're stuck doing your thing, and I'm off living my dream. And Danny's pretty happy. And I think that's the end of their story. Like, Roger does come in. I mean, Roger and Don do come in later and have to hear some interesting things. But I think that's it. So why don't we move on over to Joan? Because now I'm thinking the episode started with Joan meeting with a guy for dinner. And she met with this guy through her friend. Remember her friend who was moving from Mary Kay to Avon? She set them up with dinner. Joan thought it was a date, and it turns out this guy is in the marketing department, and he's looking for possibly new advertising. Joan sees this as an amazing opportunity and realizes, oh my God, I may actually be bringing in a client, a big-time client on my own. She, the first thing she does is bring it to Peggy. Peggy's like, oh, that's an amazing opportunity. We should bring Ted in on this. And Peggy and Joan is like, but it's my thing. He's like, no, Ted's not like that. He brings Ted in, and Ted just like, he doesn't seem like disrespectful, but he just is like, oh, this is great. Bring it to Pete. Pete, come here as the head of all new business. Pete's like, what? He goes, this is Avon. Peggy's in charge. Joan's the contact or whatever. And Pete's like, okay, great. Get the information to me, and I'll set up a meeting with me and Peggy. This is great. And Joan's like, no, I think I should be there. And Pete was like, that's not how it works. You'll get all the credit. Don't worry. And Peggy's like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was going to happen. So later on, Peggy shows up to the meeting. Joan's there alone, and she's like, listen, I just want to let you know, Pete couldn't make it. She's like, what do you mean Pete couldn't make it? He couldn't make it. I'm sorry. There was a mix-up. He's like, what are you talking about? Joan never told Pete that the meeting was going to be happening. Joan is pissed at the idea that Pete is going to be coming in and taking, getting all the credit. But Joan screwed up, I think. Joan, look, I know she wants the credit, but this is not, like, there is a protocol. There's a way things are done. And Joan bypassed that and totally threw Peggy off. Peggy tries to talk to this guy, and Joan butts in. And then Peggy just sat there and was like, oh, should I say something now? Like, that's how it even seemed like, oh, should I be the one? Can I talk now, Joan? And it seemed like things went good. Like, the guy seemed like a good person. He seemed like that he was there strictly for business. But it was just the way they went about it. Peggy actually, was feeling like it made her sick to her stomach. She's like, you blew this. Everything we had, you blew it. You blew it. And Peggy, like, Joan's grabbing at Peggy's arm. She's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, stop grabbing me like that. And then she's like, you had to do your way to get to the top. She's like, I never slept with Don. And I think, Joan sees that as, she's a partner because she made that sacrifice. So there was just arguing back and forth between the two of them about this. Then later on in the episode, they get Pete is pissed off because he gets all the secretaries got samples sent from Avon, and there's a letter saying thank you for the meeting us. We had a really nice lunch. So Joan gets called out. Peggy gets yelled at. She's like, Peggy had nothing to do with this. So Peggy isn't in trouble with this. Pete is pissed off. He brings Ted into it, and Ted is pissed off because of that's not how protocol is done. That's not how things are done, blah, blah, blah. Peggy's listening in the other room, and she has the secretary run in and say there's a phone call from Avon for Joan. So she saves Joan's ass by pretending that Avon's calling for Joan, and Ted's like, well, what are you waiting for? You better not mess this up. There was no phone call, but Peggy's like, you better hope that he actually does call, because now if this is a big client, if this is the connection, if this is how things are being, if this is how they get Avon, then this is how they get Avon. They're going to have to stick with it. But it's just that, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and Joan went the wrong way about it. Also going on is they have the clients Manischewitz, and that's Roger's client, and Ginsburg is working on this thing, and Harry Hamlin's dealing with it while Roger's away, and Harry Hamlin is kind of like, it seems like he sabotaged this on purpose. He ends up bringing Bob in, and definitely says Ginsburg needs to be there. There's this big argument beforehand because they're listening to the radio about the Vietnam stuff, and Stan and Ginsburg care about it. But Harry Hamlin, all he cares about, doing work. There's nothing he can do. He can't deal with this. He's not in the middle of this, so he shouldn't be dealing with this. But Ginsburg yells at him, "You're part of the problem. This is, what's wrong with you people like this. That this is why." Basically yelling at him because he's quote unquote the man. And Harry Hamlin is pissed off that, he says to Pete, he says to Ted, we fired the wrong people. I think we should fire all of them and bring these people back. And Ted's like, that's not how this works. He goes, especially Ginsburg. And Ted's like, Ginsburg is a firecracker. He's lightning in a bottle. You can't fire him. But so instead he seems to sabotage things, because at one point Bob comes in, and Bob just seems to, try to smooth things over between Ginsburg and Harry Hamlin. But it's not his place. He gets yelled at for that. He apologizes, saying he just doesn't like disrespect. And Harry Hamlin's like, well, why don't you, if you can get Ginsburg going, why don't you deal with Manischewitz? And Harry Hamlin says this, and Manischewitz doesn't go that well. They put him in review. In other words, they are not sure they want to stick with them. Bob takes the blame. He says, this was my idea, but it wasn't his idea. It was Harry Hamlin's idea. And Harry Hamlin, I feel like, wants to, Ted came back from Chevy and things went great. Roger and Don came back from LA and things didn't go very good. Bob and Michael Ginsburg comes back with Manischewitz and things did not go good. And it seems like Harry Hamlin is trying to show or trying to push their agenda, their clients, their people over the others. And Ted even says it's, you're doing this us versus thing them. He doesn't really like that. Towards the end of the episode, did I cover everything? I feel like I covered most of that stuff. Towards the end of the episode, Roger and Don come directly into the office, and Pete is pissed off. He wants to talk to them immediately. He doesn't like the way things are going. He doesn't like that there's it's like mutiny. He's mostly pissed about Joan, I think, than anything. And then Ted and Harry Hamlin and Bert, they're like the partners here. They want to come in. They all come into the office, and they said we've come to a decision. We think the company should be called Sterling Cooper and Partners. And that, Pete was like, huh? Pete wasn't crazy about it, and Don really didn't seem to care all that much. He was like, well, what are you going to do? Everyone's okay with this? Everyone signs off on this? Because Harry Hamlin's like, I'm in the same boat with you. All of their names are taken off, and Sterling Cooper remains. Roger's like, I feel like I should be taken off this. And then Roger says to Bert, good job on this. And Bert's like, I had nothing to do with this. Bert had nothing to do with this. There was no argument. So it was Harry Hamlin's idea to be Sterling Cooper and Partners. Now, something's up there, right? Something's up. They didn't do this out of the kindness of their heart. And I feel like even Pete said something about, this wasn't a kindness. He was like, he saw through it. He's like, this is not some consolation. They're doing something with this. Roger's like, and Don was like, what's the difference? This is the business. If you don't like it, maybe you shouldn't be in it. But it seems to me, this is just a guess, that Harry Hamlin is trying to make the Sterling Cooper people look bad. And when they look bad, all their names are off the marquee, and Sterling Cooper is the name that's going to look bad. So these guys could move on, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we're off. We're doing our own thing. We're okay." It's just a guess, but that's what it seems like it is. I don't trust Harry Hamlin, but I enjoy his portrayal of this stiff gentleman. I did like Roger was when he was talking to the woman in California. She was tripping, and he was like, "I've done that. Like there was a bonding thing before he got punched in the Corleones. I think I covered it. Stan and Ginsberg. Ginsberg had his outburst. Stan smoking weed in the office and trying to work. Oh, he's working, and Pete's like, "What are you doing?" And Pete comes out and takes the joint from Ginsberg. Ginsberg's smoking weed while he's working, and Pete just takes a drag and sits there, and like a slow exhale of smoke as Janis Joplin plays, and that's how the episode ends. So it's funny that Pete didn't have a major role in this episode. He was reacting to things, he was left out of things, but at the end we see Pete just he seems disenchanted, I think, with how things are going right now. He's got the family thing he's dealing with, he's got the mom thing he's dealing with, and he's got this work thing he's dealing with. Again, I don't like Pete, so I don't feel bad for him, but I'm just trying to see where he's coming from. Joan is screwed up, but if she does get that call and she does make Avon work, then it doesn't matter. Ted said, he goes, new business is new business for all of us, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. He yelled at Pete about that because Pete wants the credit. Ted's like, who cares? New business is new business. So it's all pretty interesting. I will see where it goes. And definitely Dawn is having some sort of existential thought about Megan and thought about maybe having another kid. Jesus, Dawn, don't do it. Don't do it. I think that is it. So, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. We have things are looking great in Detroit. Not so great in California. Not so great in New York, depending on which side you're on. If you're still seeing sides, which Harry Hamlin certainly is. Pete sees one side, his. Peggy was just like, Peggy was good at this. She did what she, she stood up for herself, but she also helped Joan when Joan really needed it. I think that's it. I think I've covered everything. So, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Let me just say, happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody. You will hear from me again before the end of the decade, before the end of 2019. Can you believe it? Can you believe this, folks? We have, 3 episodes left in this season? 11, 12, and 13? I can't believe it. In 3 weeks, we will be embarking on the 7th and final season of Mad Men. I should do the whole show talking like this. This could be my public radio persona. Hello, I'm Public Radio Michael. Thank you so much for listening. On today's episode, we talk about Don Draper smoking a hookah and almost drowning. Oh, I think I could do that. It's actually kind of soothing to talk that way because I have the microphone right up to my mouth and I can hear it in my ear. And then I can transition to the voice you all know, as I want to say, I want to thank you. You can follow me on Twitter at MadeManPod, and the website is fansnotexperts.com. And as we near the end of this decade, the end of this year, and the end of this season, I just want to say thank you so much for listening and coming with me as I continue this journey to strive and become a made man.
fans, not experts.